I prefer the term batting leadoff, but you know what, that's all right.
All right, batting leadoff.
So how you doing tonight?
Good.
Tough crowd.
Yeah.
Hi.
Group of poets walking to a bar. First of all, Bob, thank you for having us reading tonight, and thanks to all you for coming out in this lovely liquid sunshine and moonshine. So recently, what I've been doing is working on a couple projects, one of which is memorizing some of my poems, and another is putting some of my poems to music. And as a result of that,
I think you turned the mic
I
off.
think I'm just going to leave it here.
Just two.
I'll just leave it here.
Did you break out?
Alright, you know what? Mike just looks good here. So, but as a result of that, I don't have a lot of new stuff tonight, so some of this stuff, some of you may have heard. Hopefully it is, there are a couple in here that you haven't, but either way, I hope you like it. So the first poem is called After the Rain. We've been here before, your hand in mine, learning something about each other and what we are capable of. The rain has stopped. I imagine that the ground outside smells like worms. Our penitential thoughts unspoken rise with the steam from our coffee. Every time that we return to our moorings, our longboats resting on the shore, even though this is someplace we've been to many times in the past, it feels like we're stepping onto this unexplored land for the first time. So the next couple poems are inspired by different quotes from Walter Benjamin. The first one is called The Fragile Illusion. To walk among the trees, listening to the rain slip from their leaves. It's not what we would call history. It's truth. The truth of feeling the sun dry my sweat over lifetimes of lifetimes. Once we measured the world by how often we died. We watched the sun become the moon, become the sun. We questioned where it went and why it came back. Then we shackled it, placed it in a round cage, and named it time. But it's not ours to own. It never was. How far will I drift before the air runs out? I awoke in a burnout building on the outskirts. I stepped through the door into the street, over the rubble, the bodies broken like flowers in the ice. Tomorrow, they'll put a stamp on it, mission accomplished, and they'll call it a victory, and we'll forget. They'll tell us, and we'll believe it, but it won't be the truth. It will only be a fragile illusion, one that could be broken with the weight of our eyes could we only see. This is how one pictures the angel of history. His face is turned towards the past, where we perceive a chain of events. He sees one single catastrophe which keeps piling wreckage and hurls it in front of his feet. The angel would like to stay, awaken the dead, and make whole what has been smashed. But a storm is blowing in from paradise. The storm irresistibly propels him into the future, to which his back is turned, while the pile of debris before him grows skyward. This storm is what we call progress. So, the end of this poem is the quote from Walter Benjamin. And the next poem is, it starts out with a quote. The poem's called the Icarus Complex, and it starts with the following quote. "The class struggle is a fight for the crude and material things without which no refined and spiritual things could exist." It's a diagonal line. Draw it left to right, top to bottom. Abandoned gas station, waiting to be turned into tomorrow's next big thing. It's a symbol of how we failed someone's dreams, anyone, a lot of anyone's, staring at ceilings, sitting in wheelchairs parked in hallways, staring. Then you go up, diagonally, left to right, until it's even with the first line. We were a cell, breaking apart, splitting, something coming out of something else, a demon climbing out of hell, searching for our needs, knowing but not thinking. There. That's very good. Now, let's try a harder letter. Eating, fucking, finding someone to fuck. It's a miracle we get anything done. We are miracles, everyone by design. I never thought that line was funny.
Everybody loves that.
Things we were designed to do. Survive until we can reproduce. Acquire the means to reproduce. Reproduce. Die. Remember that. Remember that. We were designed to die. Brick by brick, feather by feather, we build, we create. We are better than that, right? But we inch towards the sun that will burn us all indiscriminately into nothing. And tomorrow, I'll teach you a word. So, our legal system's a funny thing. It's based upon the idea that, if you do something, you're punished for it. And that kind of makes sense. If you break the law, you should pay the consequences. But at the same time, that gets sticky when you think about things like mass shootings or terrorism, where in order for someone to be arrested, one of these horrible acts has to occur. And so it kind of calls into question our legal system and makes us think about preventing these things, preventing them in a reasonable way without really kind of encroaching on our own freedoms and liberties. And I don't really have any answers to this problem. This is a problem we've been dealing with for a long time. But I wrote the following poem in order to kind of explore this a little bit and see where it took me. And so this poem is called Justification. All at once, in a rush, I grab my backpack, walk out the door of my apartment, down the hall, down the stairs, through the lobby, into the street, turn right, passing people, passing you, brushing your shoulder, locking eyes for just a second. To the corner, turn right, around the block, down the stairs before the food truck, through the turnstiles, onto the platform, onto the subway, onto the platform, through the turnstiles, up the stairs, into the street, turn left, go down 3 blocks, passing people, people that I will never meet, shops that I will never go into. Turn left, into the lobby, passing the guard reading the newspaper, through the door, down the stairs, into the stairwell. I drop my backpack. Up the stairs, through the doors, through the lobby, past the guard reading the newspaper, through the doors, out into the street, turn right, and I start counting. 2 blocks, 3 blocks, 4 blocks. I hear it, I feel it, the panic, the screams, the crying, the fear, the terror. It is done. A new dawn. I turn my head as the sirens pass. Stop! Just stop. Rewind. before the terror, before the panic, before the building, before the train, before the street or the stairs, if you knew what I had in my bag, what you would have done next would have been justified. That's fair. But what if the only thing that I had in my bag was my anger? My hate for you, the only weapon that I carried? What if my pockets were only lined with every oath I've written against you, and my vest only wired to every crime that you have committed? What then would be justified? And what then would you do? Thank you. So, my one great-grandfather was a real pain in the ass. He was not a great person, but he's been the fodder for a lot of different stories. And so this poem is inspired by him and his relationship with another relative of mine, my great-grandfather on the other side. It's entitled, Old Canvasback versus the South Philly Nightmare. George was a prize fighter because, well, when you're an immigrant, you're used to fighting. Orestes, on the other hand, would fight anyone. Despite being in his 80s, he sent some kid to the hospital from a Broad Street bar. True story, by the way. George didn't like Orestes, though he was too polite to say anything. On his son's wedding day, Orestes had to work. Other times, they would throw him parties, birthdays. He wouldn't attend. George ate his cake and said nothing, but he knew. They should have gotten along, but they didn't. Perhaps that's why I envisioned them in their heaven together. They took a barn that was sitting in divine disrepair and asked St. Peter if they could use it. They fixed it up, kind of, and they put in a ring and a bell. They then strapped leather on their hands and boxed old school. In between rounds, they'd sit on the side of the ring, swigging whiskey from the same bottle, and George would give Orestes pointers on his left hook. They'd fight for all eternity, but that's okay. It's easier to fight than to love. Easier to destroy than create. And, well, showing that they cared just wasn't something that they ever learned to do. It's best to stick to what you're good at. So I have one more poem that I'm going to read. First of all, I want to thank you again for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. Thanks to Bob and to all the other featured readers. So this is a poem that I read a lot. I tend to end a lot of my readings with it. You know, kind of a running theme through a lot of my poems is that, you know, the world kind of sucks, but at the end of the day, whatever gets handed to us doesn't matter as much as what we end up doing with it. You know, how do we deal with the problems that befall us, and how do we kind of rise above the problems and the tragedies that we face? And so I think that that's embodied in this poem. It's entitled 1 Minute. Every minute of your life has led you to this one. The trials have become lessons. Suffering, understanding, losses, closure. All preparing you to survive this minute. In this minute, nothing else matters. Past, future, irrelevant. Do not distract yourself. Embrace it. Experience it. Immerse yourself in it. Lock it away so that you will always know what it will feel like, what it has felt like to get up and walk away having conquered this minute. Thank you.